Hey YouTube, I'm Taylor with Tinker with Tools and welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be discussing utility knives and more specifically those from the brand Olfa. Now, I found a great place where you can pick these up for a cheap price with good service, so we're going to go over that today and some of the differences they have in their knives and teach you why you should try an Olfa knife. So now the question at hand, why a utility knife? Well, a wise man once said, never go anywhere without a knife. That wise man, Leroy Jethro Gibbs. Fictional character, great words of wisdom to live by. And so one of the things I've done is put a bunch of these utility knives around the house. Gives me good access whenever you need to break down a box, stuff something into the recycling bin that won't fit, or even, break down other things around the house. And especially if you don't have one of these on Christmas morning when you're helping your kids open up all those packages, you're really missing out. So today we're going to talk about a couple of different ones from the brand Olfa. So now why Olfa? So when I was growing up, my mom would always do sewing, quilting, variety of craft projects, and she always had the scary yellow rotary cutter that I was never allowed to touch and I was told would easily take my finger off. Now I've since learned that that was made by a company named Olfa, founded in Japan back in the 70s. They've now expanded into something more than just rotary cutters and make some of the nicest knives around. Alright, so now my first Olfa was this right here, which is the LAX 18. I actually picked this up one day in the paint section at Home Depot, and this knife is interesting for various reasons. First off, on one end it has a flat metal piece jutting out, if you can see that, and that can be used for a lot of different things. The use case that I first saw when it was explained to me was if you ever need to take off an outlet cover when you're painting, you can quickly just use that as a flat blade screwdriver. The other one that I find quite handy is if you've ever got to open a can of paint, instead of having to go find that flat blade screwdriver, that just comes in handy and it can do multiple things. Now the blade on these, as it said in the title, is an 18mm snap blade that has various sections that you can snap off so that it's always going to remain sharp on the point where you need it. The other nice thing is, unlike your traditional Fastback utility knife from Milwaukee or some of the other ones from other companies that use the little replaceable razor blades, if you ever need just a little bit of extra length, this one will extend out up to the length of the blade to give you the ability to cut through something thicker, something that I really like. So I started with this one, and it is a great tool. To be honest, I probably, if I had stopped here with this one and just gotten more of these, I would have been just fine, nice and happy. The only thing is, with that tip down in there in the end, if you're ever rummaging around, sometimes it'll poke. It's not super sharp, but it's just not the most comfortable thing to jab your hand into. But the usefulness outweighs any of the drawbacks. Wonderful knife. So the next one I picked up is this Olfa XA1X design, and it is actually their standard or light duty utility knife, and it actually comes with a 9mm blade. Much smaller, half the size. Still is a snap blade, so you can snap that off and get the one you want. But I actually got this when I was looking to start doing some foam carving and different things for a kid's craft project. And so I wanted something that was a little bit more agile at going around a circle or creating a tighter circle. So I picked that up. And honestly, great little knife to have. It's almost like an X-Acto knife with extra reach. Maybe not quite as sharp, but obviously you just break off one of those tips and you've got another sharp knife again. I love the sliding action. I find it's really easy to use one-handed. Just quickly get out there. Great little knife, good compact design. Doesn't have the screwdriver or the flat attachment on the back, so you can't do any of that stuff. But this is considerably lighter and smaller than the 18mm version. But with that comes some drawbacks. It's not going to cut us through as big of things as what the other one is. It's not as strong at going through different things. And so this really is a lighter duty utility knife. More so for some of those smaller projects that I was just talking about. Still can open a box in a pinch, can do all those things, but just not going to be something that's there. Now this one also does have, I guess you could call it a belt clip maybe. It's just a little clip out here on the side. I don't know if you can see that. We'll try and get a close-up of it. That allows you to clip that onto something or hang it on something. Kind of nice. Hadn't really noticed it when I first got it, but every once in a while you just want to clip it on something. So another great one. All right, so then next, I followed the route of Tim the Toolman Taylor and thought more power, always the answer, right? You got to get in one of those big deep grunts. Well, then I went out and got this, which is the XH1. Picked this one up from Lowe's, and it is actually a 25 millimeter, and it is a behemoth. Okay, big old knife, still the snap blade design, still nice and big, but as you can see, considerably larger than that 18 millimeter. And when you really need to cut something, you notice it with this one. It is nice and big and can do a lot of good things there. Now the reason why this one is not a favorite of mine has to do with the ratcheting wheel slide attachment. So you have to loosen it to get it all the way out, or to get the knife out, and then you have to tighten it back down so that it doesn't slide around. Now that's great, but oftentimes the way I use one of these utility knives is extending it quickly for a quick little second, cutting what I need, and putting it right back in my tool belt. I find this one, although is a lot heavier duty, ends up being more of a two-handed operation, and because of that, this one has kind of fallen out of favor and isn't something that I go to a lot. You can do it one-handed, but I just find it so much less convenient than going with one of the other knives. And so this one actually stays on my workbench and only comes out when I really need to cut through something big for that. The other downfall is obviously the more different size knives you have. If you ever run out of blades, or you run through the original blade that comes with it, you would have to buy a different size to replace there. So at the end of the day, the 18 is probably the most versatile for me. It's small enough, but it's also big enough to get some of those jobs done. All right, so after all that, I kind of found myself not loving any one of the three knives perfectly, and kind of wanted to see what else they have. The original one that I got is still going to be my favorite. It's still the one I'd recommend to get for most people just wanting to get a good utility knife. But like I said, there were some things that I wanted to see what else was out there. And like anything, when you talk about it near your phone, you eventually start getting some marketing for Olfa knives. And I started to see different ones pop up and wanted to try different ones. So I tried going on to HomeDepot.com and even Lowe's.com to look and see what else was out there. But really, what I was finding in those three was about all that I could find. There were some like Olfa X-Acto knives, like actual X-Acto style knives that I could go to. Ended up not wanting to really go that route, and so I started searching around on the internet, and that's when I found AAA Industrial Supply, a website online. I'll include links down in the description. And as near as I can tell, they handle or sell just a few variety of products, and one of them is Olfa cutting products. So I went there and started looking around, found one or two options that we'll go over here in a second that I wanted to get, and quickly found that if I went up to $25, I got free shipping. And so as I took a look at it, at spending around $15 with the shipping, I was already almost to $25 anyway, and so I added a couple of extra knives. And I'm glad I did, because I actually found probably my favorite one and the one that goes with me just about everywhere now. So what did I end up with? All right, so what did I end up with when I went to there? Well, the first one I got was this one that just looked nice and seemed pretty good. Didn't have the thing on there, and instead of a plastic construction, this is actually a mostly metal construction. Made it seem a little bit heavier duty, and so I wanted to check that out. This one, I apologize, I'm looking at the name so I don't mix it up, is the MXP AL 18mm heavy duty aluminum knife. It still takes those same 18mm snap-off blades as the first one. Works really nice. Actually has the same slide design. I learned from that rotary wheel, the ratcheting wheel, that I did not want one of those. So I wanted to give it a try of a couple of these other ones just to see if I liked them. And overall, it's a great knife. It doesn't have the extra functionality of the flat blade on the end of it. Makes it a little nicer in the hand. The metal's obviously nice. It has a little more heft to it. But it, at the end of the day, is functionally the same as that original knife. Just a little bit nicer to hold, or a little bit smoother to hold. Good knife. Alright, the next one I tried was the UTC-1 model 9115. And it actually was described as a safety knife. So this is one of the first ones that actually doesn't take those snap blades. This just has a two-sided razor blade, kind of more traditional what you're doing, just a little bit longer, that hooks onto the end there and is able to be used on both sides. So you do have two cutting edges. When one wears out, you can do the other one. Now, first I had a hard time figuring out why it was a safety knife. And then I realized that I had purchased some extra blades. And these blades right here, they are model number RSKB2. They are actually a little bit rounded on the edges, or on the point, and so they're not going to be as sharp to the touch, and I think that's where the safety knife feature comes from. So obviously Olfa supplies a lot of products for industries and different things like that, and so they have to have things that are going to be compliant with the rules and safety regulations that are in those industries, and I think that's where this one comes in. Honestly, it doesn't have, the drawback to this one is it doesn't have the extra length, but it actually does have a nice blade still, nice and strong, and it does have that dual side, so you're probably going to get quite a bit of use out of it before it runs out. I actually really like this one as well. Once again, I'd still probably go back to the original one, but it's a great knife, and I like having it around the house. Alright, now this next one is one that I picked up because in my younger years I worked in a grocery store, and I always had to carry a box cutter in my pocket to be able to open up a box or break down something on the shelf. And so I actually got very fond of these. This is the most premium box cutter you will ever find. The internal component is actually a plastic design, but the outside portion, this white portion, is actually metal. And once you get this open, it's a little stiff to open right now, but they actually say that that is a snap-off blade that can be extended and used, so you actually have more than cutting edges than just that reversible razor blade here. And the last segment is actually reversible as well, so you do get quite a bit of use out of this one. Now, I imagine over time that the opening process will actually loosen up a little bit. Right now it's actually quite stiff. One of the things I always liked about those little metal box cutters I had was how easily you could open and close them. Obviously not probably the safest thing, but this one is really premium, really nice, and it was a fraction of the cost of some of these other knives. So if you wanted to have a few of them around the house but didn't want to go to big expense, pick up a couple of these, it'd be great for it. Alright, now to get over that $25 threshold, I was looking at $1 or $2 to be able to get over that, and that's when I discovered the Olfa touch knife. This tiny little thing that came, and when it came I thought, oh, that's cool, and then I tried to use it once and I was like, oh no, that's not very nice, I don't really like that one. And then I realized how you could hold it, just holding it like this with your finger kind of curved around the top and doing that, and you get this tiny, teeny tiny little blade that I'm going to have to show you a close-up to really get a good view of that. But that tiny little blade comes out, and this is incredibly valuable to have in your pocket. It takes up next to no space. It doesn't weigh a thing because the outer housing is all plastic. It is not, from what I can tell, replaceable in any way. That's why it is so low cost. But super sharp little edge on it. Great to carry around in my pocket. You don't even notice it's there. For the last couple of weeks, it's actually replaced a pocket knife in my pocket, and I just carry around this tiny little blade capable of cutting most things, just not going to saw through something larger like a rope or something, but it works for what I've needed it for, and it is just tiny and lightweight and perfect. It's not going to open up in your pocket without a very specific action, so I don't think you're ever going to find that it just opens up randomly and cuts you. It is one of their safety knives as well, and it is just great. You can actually pick these up for just under $2, and you can get multiple ones and just have those sitting around. And like I said, it takes a second to figure out how to open, so even just having it around, I don't think it's going to be too big of an issue with kids. And although they can cut themselves on it, that blade only goes out maybe a ½ an inch, and so you're not going to be cutting anything too bad with this. That's another thing I like about it, is it does offer some protection that way. But seriously, just great little knife. Comes in a variety of colors, and it is just wonderful to use. Alright, so there you have it. They truly have a knife for just about everyone over at Olfa, and you can find the one that works best for you. You may end up liking that ratcheting wheel design. I did not. That doesn't mean it's not, that just means it's not for me. It's not a bad knife. It's actually really well built, great knife to use. I just don't like it compared to the slide design that's there. They have a variety of them. I'm probably to the point where I don't need to purchase any more Olfa knives, except for maybe a couple of these touch knives, just because they're so handy to have. But go ahead and check out Olfa knives. Check out AAA Industrial Supply. I'll leave a link down on the bottom, and I'll even link the knife models that I've tried here and the ones that you could try if you'd like. If you see something that's helpful in this video, go ahead and let me know. If you have questions about any of these, I can't promise I'm going to have every answer, but go ahead and hit me up with those questions in the comments down below. If you like what you saw here, give us a like and a subscribe so you can see more great content from Tinker with Tools. And I hope you have a great day in your shop, and we'll see you next time.